Welcome back to the channel. We're here in Australia again after being in Europe for the last 6 days. Thank you for all your comments and feedback. Today's video is a massive one. Bitcoin has finally pumped as expected. It is on track for the next 3 critical resistance levels for that potential crash that we've been watching and waiting for. So we're going to get into those 3 key areas of resistance and also how traders are trading this on the chart, looking at long positions, as you guys have also asked for stops, to focus a little more on stops. So we're going to look purely at the Bitcoin chart, and I've got some Ethereum updates. Primarily because this had a signal that we looked at in a recent video as well. You can see right here. So I'll look at this one in just a little more detail to give you an idea of the proof that the crash is great news for Bitcoin and how this had flowed on into the price pumping on Bitcoin before it had actually pumped. It's here on this video back on the 28th of May. So without further ado, smash up the likes, subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and of course check out the links to our premium group down below. So there's the Patreon link right there, and also Bybit. That has got 1 more week exclusive giveaway for the viewers of this channel and Michael's channel. We're going to win 2 ETH. 4 lucky winners will get half an ETH each using that link specifically. So make sure you use that link if you want to be involved in that giveaway. We're here at Bitcoin. Let's look at the Bitcoin chart, the dominance, ETH, how this is all working together, how far we have to go in the move, what traders are doing, and what I'm expecting, of course, for altcoins as well. So the breakout happened as expected. I love using that term because it's pretty much straightforward when we look at the 50% level. The timing can obviously take a little longer than people would love to, that people would like, but it does happen eventually. So we've had that 50% support tested once, 2 times, 3 times. We got the breakout of the falling wedge. The next day had that little bit of a close up. So if we use our bars to get a cleaner look here at the chart. And then on the 30th of May, which is when I was traveling and unfortunately I couldn't put a video out, we had that move up. The beauty about this move is that it was on increased volume compared to the last 7 to 10 days or so. The close was high. These are key things to look for, especially when you are trading the market, to look for strength versus weakness. So you can see that close, this is on the right-hand side of that bar, this little horizontal line is above that previous level that we were trying to get above. $30,700 was the key level as well. Here you can see from this yellow horizontal line, so the market got above that. That was all those rejections that we saw on the 4-hour chart. The market was able to clear that eventually on this bar right here, just on the 31st. So you can see it came up to it and then finally cleared that with a nice strong close. And now it looks like we're just trying to figure out whether we are ready to move on again, or if we need to come back and test some of these lower prices before we can get that move to the upper prices. So where are the next resistance levels? So I've picked out 3 key areas here because these key areas are picked out based on what has happened in the past. They were extreme events for that point in time, so we compare those to now. The halfway point, this is the drop from the 5th of May where we had that very, very fast sell-off into the 12th of May. So this was happening around that time of Luna absolutely blowing up and dumping to 0. So that you can see the speed of that dump. It started from the 5th of May to the low. Halfway is at 32,700. So we're just starting to hold out now, finding some resistance at that level on the 10th of May where we got rejected before we dropped to that final low on the 12th. So that's what we're now attempting to overcome after we just got above these previous highs of 31,000. So this is the key level at the moment, and we're just waiting to get above that. But the 50% level, which is just above that, is 32,700. So for a round number above that, 32,800. So that's our first level, 32.8. So that's what I'm going to look at there. The next level is the most critical level, so 34,500. So I'll leave that there on the chart as well. That's our major 50% level from the all-time high to 0. And our next level, which is kind of similar to that 34,000, is right there at 34,100. So this level on the 21st of April, we had that little run up in Bitcoin. This was after some of the Fed announcements. So the market basically started to run up and then dumped pretty heavily from that point before we got that final shakeout to the low. So the 34,100 and 34,500 is pretty similar. So I'm going to count that as one area. So far we have 32,800 and we have 34,500. The next key level is the peak that we got leading up into the Bitcoin conference. So this was the last time we had extreme excitement. I'm not going to say extreme greed because the market wasn't at extreme greed at that point, but we had extreme excitement leading into that Bitcoin conference, that top in late March, and that was at 48,100. The market never made it that far, and all the talk at that time was to get above $50,000, and the market just could not do it. And so if we look at the 50% there, it's at around 36,700. But I'm going to call it just a little higher than that. So if we throw this onto a weekly chart, we can see that there's some resistance at around $37,000. So we're just looking at all these lows that came in at about this point and just drawing a line across. So it's about 37.5K. And for a round number above that, could say around 38. So the three levels are looking at now. First one we need to overcome is around that $32.5-ish thousand. Like we just wrote, 32.8. Then there is 34.5K. Then we'd be looking to around the $38,000. Three key levels for Bitcoin to overcome. They're all pretty close at this point in time, but that's not a bad thing because at least we can see that the resistance is close, and hopefully if we can overcome all of these sooner rather than later, then we start to climb back above those levels to consolidate above the 38K level and work our way higher, which would mean that we would invalidate this low. So I think if we can get above those levels, consolidate and continue to move higher with higher highs and higher lows on a swing chart, that is going to be the first sign that maybe this is the actual low. So you never know until after the fact, but we just have to look at how the market is reacting. So I think there's going to be a fair bit of resistance coming up here for Bitcoin. But of course, like I said, if it gets above that, that's great. Obviously, the next level, the key level is 48 and the 52K levels. But I think we're getting too far ahead of ourselves to even contemplate getting to the high 40s or low 50s at this point, as there's so much work to do for Bitcoin at these lower levels. So let's break it down onto a smaller, shorter term time frame for the traders. So the traders have been asking about stop levels and where you can, get into these trades, see some early profits in a trade, and where could you put your stop so that you're not stopped out. I purely look at 50%, nice and simple, and this is helpful for any other trades that you're looking to do, whether it's on altcoins, Ethereum, whatever, stocks, doesn't matter as long as there is a chart. So 50% was right there, and then you can see the previous support, which just got wicked out, and that's what happens. You can see this bar here just took out all of those lows and closed higher, tried to take it out again and closed higher. So sometimes with trades, you have to have the stops nice and close, and you can see that to the downside, it may only have been 1% or 2%, and you get stopped out and you try again and you try again. The trades sometimes work like that, where you do get stopped out, but as long as you've got your entry signal to get back into the market, eventually it works in your favor. The way to not get destroyed in the market, not to get wrecked, is to be close to those areas, to those stops. And then sometimes you have to take multiple trades in order to get to the trade that's actually going to take off, like we have seen from about that $29,000 up to $32,000. So in terms of a percentage, that currently is about 10%. So depending on what leverage you want, if you're in fact using leverage, then if it's a 10x, that's going to be a 100% return. If it's a 5x, it's a 50% return to where it currently is. So that's how it works. But sometimes it does take a couple of opportunities to get into the market. So that's looking at stops and how you can also use them in your altcoin trades as well. In terms of the timing for this, when is this going to be over? When will we find out? I'm looking at a monthly chart here. So previously for Bitcoin, we've seen it jump 2 months and then reverse. We've seen it happen in the bull market. We had 2 months up, then we had a red month. Even though the month is still higher, we had a red month. So we could call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months into the peak before we got rejected, 2 months up again, or we could say 2 greens and then another green. So maybe this is between 1 and 2 months in this period. We need to have some sort of green, maybe sideways for this period. I would prefer to see it on a weekly chart and look for a weekly resistance. This is week 1, potentially 1 to maybe 6 or so weeks. Now, I say that because we had the low from January to the peak in April. That was about 9 weeks. But we had really 2 weeks up, 2 weeks down. We had 1 week up, another week down. Then we had 2.5 weeks up, and then we went down again. So the extent of it is 9 for this whole move, even though there was a few tops and bottoms in between. And now we've seen 8 weeks down, with this 1 week up. So the best case is probably going to be somewhere around that midpoint. So somewhere around 4.5, 5 weeks, because that's what we've seen in the past. Worst case is possibly just the 1 week up to test these low $30,000 to mid $30,000 levels before we reverse. And from that point, you would definitely want to see the market hold above $29,000 as it has done for this move. We didn't get any closes below 29,000, which was the previous support in January, May, June, and July. So the market has held up above that in terms of a closing price. I dare say we will see further lower prices in the coming months of 2022, but at the moment it's holding up and we're finally getting that bounce. When we looked at it in the previous video I just did on the Bitcoin crash, so looking at a 36% drop from the last time this happened, what was I looking at? Let's have a look here on the chart again. So we had this move up from December. So we're looking at the 4th of December low to that peak. We had 25% up. And then from that top, we dumped 36%. Now I'm referencing this December point because it is very similar to what we've just seen. You can see the market dumped into May and we had a big wick all the way back up with a couple of weeks, just to hold up that market like we saw last time. Big dump in that first week of December, and then the market held up and just a little before it reversed for a couple of weeks. So it held up for a couple of weeks. Maybe we see another couple of weeks up from last week's low. So we move up 20, 25%. That gets us back to those targets of around mid 30s, and the approximate 36% dump from the mid 30s would take us all the way back down to about $22,000. What have we all been looking at in terms of $22,000? Well, we've been looking at the 200-week moving average, which is now at $22,200. And of course, over the next few weeks, it's going to climb higher. So somewhere around 22.5, 23,000. It's all sort of working out to that point. And if we see it happen probably late June, July, August, it's working beautifully into our timing of the 4-year cycle, which I've also got plenty of videos on the channel about that, looking for a low somewhere in later August or September, possibly towards that Q4 as well, early in that Q4. So it's all sort of working out to that point that we've been looking at since November, December of 2021. So this is now 6 months on in terms of a forecast, and the forecast is working out very, very nicely, even when a lot of people were extremely bullish through this period of January, February, March for this to go to new all-time highs. We were not saying that purely based on what we're seeing on the chart in terms of timing, and it is possible to get a good rough timing on the market. We don't need to be exact. Obviously, we're just here to take big chunks of profit out of the middle of the market. So that's the longer term view. We've looked at 3 key price points of resistance for Bitcoin potentially that it will find before we get another crash. If we are invalidated and we are wrong, I suspect we'll have to hold above 29,000. You can see how many times that has been put in. Like we already looked at, 2021, you can see what we just did there. We held above it, did not close below it. So that's going to be a key level when we get rejected and come back to test. If we are right, the market obviously keeps going. If we are wrong or the analysis needs to flip, then we should see support at 29 for the market to come back up and test these mid to high $30,000 levels before moving again. So that's the key thing now for Bitcoin. As I said in the title, something around it's, we're working towards that further crash. So this pump is part of that crash. It's important to see this reaction and see how it plays out. And then we've got to see what happens after that point. The ETH video is also really critical. So go check that out. So 28th of May, that was the one just before it. And that showed that Ethereum tends to lag. Bitcoin is holding up. Ethereum lags at every single point. It happens later. The low happens later. The top happens later for ETH. You can see the top here is on the 3rd of April, whereas Bitcoin was on the 29th. So you can see ETH moved a little bit higher. ETH went a little bit lower. And so ETH was bottoming while Bitcoin was putting in a higher low. So we go to the daily chart. You can see this low here was just higher than the 12th. And then we got the reversal. So that's another key area to look at for trading, nice trading setups. ETH gave us that proof, like I put in this video 3-4 days ago now, that it happened again that ETH was that signal that we're about to start the market turning. Of course, nothing happens 100% of the time, but when a beautiful signal like this comes up, I have to pay attention to it and use that in my own analysis. So that's ETH, that's Bitcoin. That is what I see coming up next. We've got the key critical levels for the market to come up to. In the next video, we're going to look at this fear and greed plan because it's finally broken above 15. Go and have a look at how I can actually make profits from this plan right now, as the average price is under 30K. So there's profits to be made on this right now. I'll do that in an upcoming video. Guys, let me know if you want to see a bit more walking around. The weather is beautiful out here on the Gold Coast. I can take some more videos on the beach and talk about these markets there as well. Let me know in the comments down below. Give me a sun icon if you want to see that. Like and subscribe if you have not already. And of course, the Bybit link down there. There are 2 ETH giving away to 4 lucky winners, half an ETH each. 1 more week to go. That'll be drawn on the 8th of June as well. Link in the top of the video description. I'll see you guys at the next video. Until then, have more fun to get more done.